Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves as heroes harnessing the power of our vocabularies in this exciting monster battling, loot collecting word game. You'll be gaining precious coins by damaging monsters and collecting that monster as a trophy, along with a new letter to use later on when you defeat it. Spell Smashers is a 1 to 5 player game, plays in 45 to 60 minutes by Renegade Game Studios. Today I'll be doing a rule school where I'll teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Well, without further ado, let's get started. Spell Smashers is a 2 to 5 player, monster battling, loot collecting word game where you're trying to defeat monsters and keep them as trophies. You'll be trying to damage and defeat monsters by spelling certain words, adding the damage, and looking at the damage type, but you have to be careful because some monsters have modifiers that will do different things, like be able to avoid certain types of damage. Now if you're able to defeat them, you'll be able to collect them as trophies, which get you points at the end, but also give you this letter for the rest of the game to use. But you also have to be careful because some monsters deal wounds to you when you damage them, and that allows you to get these cards that are harder to use and are worth negative points at the end of the game. And at the end of the round, everyone go to town to upgrade, like going to the tavern and buying ale for each of the wounds you have, or buying potions which give you special abilities throughout the game, or buying gear or quests, which can help you with special abilities throughout the game, and give you different goals that if you succeed, will get you points as well. And there's also a solo game where you're trying to stop boss monsters from infiltrating the town. To set up, first take the game board and place it like this in the middle of the table. The board is double-sided, and you want to make sure this solo town is not the one you're looking at. It should look like this with a round tracker in the upper left, the shaman, tavern, armory, guild, and alchemist buildings like this. On the upper left-hand part of the board near the round tracker, you're going to find this gold ring. This is the round tracker. You'll place it on round 1. You'll be using this to track the rounds throughout the game. Also on the left side, you're going to stack all of the coins in the different denominations. Next, on the right side of the board, next to the tavern, you're going to stack all of the ale tokens like this. They're double-sided and you can put them with the number 1 stacked face up. Then you're going to also take the 3 different types of potions and stack them in like kinds next to the corresponding potions, elixir, antidote, and tonic. To the right of the board, you're going to find these decks of cards, shuffle each deck independently of each other, and stack them to the right like this. The blue deck here has a C, those are your consonants. The red deck here, V, those stand for vowels. And this red deck here with a little black teardrop there is wounds. You're going to take each of those, shuffle them, and place them just like that to your right. Next, you'll find the green quest cards, shuffle them up, and place them in the designated spot just below the guild. And you'll find the gear cards that have this blue background with a shield and swords, and you're going to shuffle those up and place them in the designated spot just below the armory. Next, below the board, you're going to place one of these monster crest tiles equal to the number of players. In this case, we're playing with 3 players, so we have 3 monster crests. You can return all additional ones back to the box. Next, you're going to find the modifier deck. You're going to go through this entire deck and separate out all of the cards that have a star in the upper right-hand corner. These are the starter modifier cards. You'll take all these starters and you'll shuffle them, and you'll place one of those face up underneath each of the monster crests. Any cards not selected can be returned back to the box. Then take the rest of those modifier cards, which at this point have no starter cards in them, shuffle them up and place it below the wound deck. You'll also get all of the monster tiles, shuffle them up, and place a stack below that. You'll then add 1 monster tile face up to each of the different modifier cards that are there. So it might look something like this. We have a tiny elemental, a nasty hippogriff, and a mad golem. You're then going to add coins equal to the number on the monster, and adding to that the number on the modifier card, and you'll add that gold to the monster crest that's just above that monster. So here we have 13, here we have 15, and here we have 8. Each player will then take a player board. They're all the same, it does not matter which one you take. You'll also get a double-sided player aid, which you can put to the right of your board. You'll also get a not ready / ready tile. It has not ready on one side, ready on the other. Each player will get one of those placing it right here with the not ready side up. Each player will also get 4 consonant cards with a C and 3 vowel cards with a V. Now you can look at these, but don't show any other players as those cards are secret to you. You'll be holding them in your hand. Next, the player who most recently used a dictionary will get the tiebreaker marker that looks just like this. Then you're going to deal out starting coins. Now, starting with the player with the tiebreaker marker and going clockwise, they'll get a certain amount of coins. The one with the tiebreaker marker will get 0 coins. Then going clockwise from that tiebreaker player, each player is going to get 1 more coin than the player previous. For example, this player will get 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. This is if there was a 5-player game, and you're keeping your coins just to the right of your player board where it says coins, ale, and points. The object of the game is to have the most points at the end of 7 rounds, and you'll be getting points by capturing monster trophies by defeating them, getting gear cards, finishing quests, and having some certain tokens and money at the end as well. The game is played over 7 different rounds, which you'll track at the upper left hand of the board, and each round goes through 3 phases where you'll prepare words, you'll battle monsters, and you'll visit the town. So we're in the prepare words phase. Now in the first round, you won't be selecting any weapons. Everyone just starts with this single weapon and no armor. It's a starting stick where if you can deal 1 more damage than usual to a monster if your word has 5 or more letters. So you're not going to change anything here in the first round, so you're going to go directly to spelling a word. So when you're spelling a word, you're trying to find a legal word that cannot be a proper noun, and it cannot require apostrophes or dashes, and it must be at least 2 letters long. And when you're ready, you'll flip over this tile from not ready to ready. Now in the rare circumstance that you cannot spell a word, you will show your cards to all the other players, and if they all agree, you will discard those cards next to the corresponding deck face up. This is a sort of a discard pile to the right of that. You'll then take 1 wound card, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and then you'll draw up so that you have a total of 7 cards, taking cards from the consonants and or vowel decks in any order and up to the point where you have a total of 7 cards. Once everyone is ready, all players will simultaneously spell their words, say the word, and the number of letters it is. For example, this player will say fears for 5. This one will say tip for 3. This one will say rat for 3. Then you're going to assign initiative whoever had the most letters, not cards, because some cards you'll see will have more than 1 letter on them. The most total letters will have the first and strongest initiative. In this case, fears is the most strong because it has the most letters. Now these two are tied. Let's just suppose this player had the tiebreaker marker. Any other players, if they're tied with the same amount of letters, actually wins the initiative. So if this is the way it was, this player would have a stronger initiative than this player. But in this case, it's us with the longer word, like this. Now, since these two are tied and neither of them have the initiative, it's whoever's sitting closer clockwise to the player with the initiative marker. After you've determined that initiative, you'll go on to the second phase, which is battling the monsters. So whoever has the strongest initiative is first going to choose a monster, then deal damage. And you must battle a monster if you have a word that you've spelled, and you can deal damage to any monster that is still here at the time of your initiative turn. Keep in mind that each of those monsters are on a modifier card that might change how things work. This one does not really have a modifier, it just says and small. This one is defense, it's resistance. So essentially any card that has fire, like my A and R of the word fears, would do no damage. And this one you'll actually collect 2 additional wounds if you're the one to defeat this. Now I won't be going over all the different monster modifiers, but they're all there on the very back of the rulebook for your reference. So this player with the strongest initiative spelled fears, and it's going to target the golem. Now the golem has 8 health left. It started with 8, and we're the first ones attacking it. So we'll look at all of the numbers here. We'll also look at the modifier to see if anything might work with some of those different types. And here we have fears, and we look at the numbers. This is going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nothing's modifying these cards specifically, so there's a total of 6 right now. Don't forget to also then check your active weapon and active armor. You start with that starting stick, and we can deal this additional damage because our word is 5 or more letters. So it would have done 6 damage, but because of that starting stick, it does 7. So we're going to take 7 from the monster crest that has to do with this monster, and you'll place them just to the right of your player aid where it says coins. After you've gained your rewards, you're then going to suffer wounds. You'll look at this icon here, like the claw mark there, and you'll take that many wounds since you damaged that monster. Now look at these ones, don't do any by default, and then this one gives you 2 wounds. which means that's how many of these wound cards you draw from this deck and add to your hand. Now wound cards look like this, and they have different letter combinations that you can use to fight monsters in previous rounds. However, they're all going to be worth -1 point for each one of these cards you have at the end of the game, so you really want to get rid of them. Now normally next in this phase you would complete any quests you may have, but we're going to go over these later. Then you'll discard your word to the corresponding correct piles in a face-up pile just to the right to the corresponding deck, making sure you keep separate the consonants and vowels. The Battle Monsters phase would continue through the initiative order to the different players until all players have gone through the Battle Monsters phase one at a time. But let's show you what happens when you defeat a monster. Let's say this next player plays Tip, and it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage, but let's say they want to defeat this monster. This monster only has 1 health left, so they'll take this and they'll add it to their coins. They'll forfeit the remaining. They don't have any leftover or any remaining. They will just take what's there, and this monster will get defeated. Now, if you defeat this monster, if there were any ale tokens on them, you would get these as well. We'll talk about how you get these and how they get placed there a little bit later. But what will happen is you'll take this monster that you defeated and place it just above your player aid where it says Monsters Trophies. These are all going to be worth 3 points apiece at the end, but you'll also get to use this letter in all future battles. However, you still have to suffer the wounds because you did attack that monster, so you're going to have to take 2 by default. And if you remember, the modifier card added 2 wounds when defeated, so that player needs to take 4 wound cards. Plus, when you defeat a monster, this goes into the discard pile. So that player would take 4 of these wound cards, add them to their hand, and then use the discard pile here for that specific modifier. And like normal, that player would also discard their consonants and vowels. Keep in mind that this monster does not get replaced at this time during this round. At the end of the Battle Monsters phase, you'll pass this tiebreaker marker to whoever had the lowest initiative in that previous round, meaning they went last. Unless there was a player that wasn't able to spell a word, in that case, they get it. After all the players have gone through the Battle Monsters phase, you go to the third phase, which is Visit the Town, where each player will draw a new quest card. So each player will draw 2 of these. They'll select one of them to keep, and the one they don't keep goes face down at the bottom of this deck. And these will give you victory points at the end of the game if you do certain things that's on the card. For example, if you form a word that ends or starts with a vowel, or you have 4 wounds at the end of a battle, or deal 5 damage of a single type. Whatever you do on there, if it follows the card, you can do it during that Battle Monsters phase as spoken about previously, and you'll be able to get these points at the end of the game. Now you can only keep a maximum of 2 uncompleted quests, and these are secret from the other players. So when drawing quests, if that brings you up to more than 2, you must then discard one of these to the bottom of the deck as shown previously. But when you finish a quest, you must then reveal it to all the other players, and then you'll tuck it face down underneath the quest's completed spot on the bottom of your player aid. Then players will all simultaneously visit the town. Now, you can visit any one of these 5 buildings unless you have 5 or more of those wound cards. In that case, you have to visit the shaman. Now the shaman has you discard all of your wound cards in your hand by placing them in the discard pile, but you must also discard one of your monster trophies, meaning one of the monsters that you had defeated earlier. Now if you don't have any monster trophies, then you can simply visit the shaman without the penalty. Now you're only visiting 1 building, but if you go to the tavern, you can spend 3 coins to then get 1 of these ale tokens for each of the wound cards you have in your hand, and regardless of the amount of wound cards you have and how many you're getting, you still only pay 3. These ale tokens are worth 1 point at the end of the game, and if you get a bunch of them, you can make change by flipping this over to 3 and discarding the other ones to ensure you have the correct amount. Now you can go to the alchemist and spend the specific amount listed on the board to take 1 of those tokens. You can buy at most 1 of each of those in 1 round, but you can never have more than 1 potion of the same type at any time. Now each of these potions do something different. The elixir allows you to change the damage type of a letter that you might be using, or a monster trophy. Remember, once you get monsters as trophies, you're using these as letters, possibly in any future round, but they also deal a certain type of damage as well, and this allows you to change that to any type you like. The antidote allows you to discard either a letter or wound card from your hand, and then replace it with either a consonant or vowel. The tonic allows you to change any 1 individual letter on any of your cards or monster trophies to any letter of your choice, but the card's damage value and type do not change. You can go to the guild and draw 2 more quest cards, keeping 1, putting 1 at the bottom of this pile as shown before, keeping in mind you can only have 2 uncompleted quests at any time. Lastly, you can possibly go to the armory, spend 5, and you can draw 2 of these cards, keep 1 and put 1 underneath, just as we did with the quest deck at the bottom. You will keep the chosen card just to the left of your player aid where it says Extra Gear. After the third and final phase, visit the town, you're then going to go through a round end cleanup. Here, everyone will refill their hand, so you must draw back up to 7 total cards. Now, it's easiest to do this in clockwise order, starting with whoever had the tiebreaker marker. And remember, your wound cards count towards your hand size. Now, the cards that you can draw are either from the consonant or vowels deck. You can draw them in any order, looking at the card before you decide which one to draw next, making sure that you don't have more than 7 cards at the end of this. And so if you happen to have had 7 or more cards at this point, you would not draw any. Then each monster that is still here will get 1 ale token on it, meaning as monsters get neglected or don't get defeated, they're going to be worth more and more points as someone defeats them. And then finally, you'll flip over the next modifier card and then the next monster, filling up any spots that were empty. And then you'll increase the round marker to the next round. Now in subsequent rounds, in the first phase of preparing words, you can choose your active gear. So you might have gear over here that you have that were not active last round or that you had just gotten. And you can always select to have 1 active weapon and 1 active armor. The ones that aren't active, if they're additional, will go over here to the extra gear. Now this will continue until you get to the 7th round. You'll go through the prepare words phase and the battle monsters phase, but you do not visit the town in the 7th round. After the battle monsters phase, you go directly to the end game scoring. The back of the player aid has end game scoring on it. Each player will get 3 points for each of the monster trophies they have. They'll get 1 point for each 2 cards they have of gear. Any quests completed can now be flipped up and shown, and you'll be scoring all of those. Each ale token you have is 1 point. Each $5 you have is 1 point, and you'll get -1 point for each wound card you still have. Whoever has the most points is the winner. If it's tied, the player with the most remaining wounds wins. If it's still tied, then they share the victory. For the solo game, flip the board over so it says Solo Town in the middle. All of the rules and or setup are going to be the same as the base game unless otherwise stated here. In the gear deck, you're going to go through and remove all of the cards that have this logo on it and remove them to the box. You also won't need the monster crests or the modifier cards. You can leave those in the box as well. You're going to draw 2 monsters from the stack and you'll put them in the numbered zone that's on the back of the tile. If for some reason you draw 2 of the same, shuffle the second one back in and draw another monster so that there's monsters in 2 different zones. So it might look something like this, where we had a monster of number 2 and a monster of a number 3. If you happen to draw 2 of the same monster number on the back, discard one of those and draw another one. Keep doing this until you have monsters in 2 different zones. For each monster, place the amount of coins shown on that monster. Locate the boss monster cards that look like that, shuffle them up, and deal 1 face up. You can put the rest in the box, and this one will just stay out to the side of the board for now. Your starting cards will be 4 consonants, 3 vowels like the base game, but you will not start with any coins. Now in the prepare word phase, it works the same way, except that when you use a monster trophy as a letter, it doesn't stay around face up that you can use in multiple future rounds. If you use it for a word, it gets flipped over. You can no longer use that letter, but it will be worth points at the end. The battle monster phase and the visit town phase work different from the base game, but to understand that, let me show you how the round end phase goes. You will refill your hand as normal to 7 cards, then you'll advance the round marker, and then you'll add monsters. Now adding monsters is different in this version. You'll add 2 monsters, you'll take it off the top and you'll add it to the zone just like in the start game, but in this case now you can't have more than 1 monster in the same zone. This one says to put in zone 3, so we place it outside. If there's a monster outside, it then moves into this town just like that. So on the second monster we pull out, let's say it's a 3 again. Now if a monster needs to come out here and there's already a monster in the town, then this destroys the town. And you would discard this monster that attacked the town and you would place a wound card face up on that town. It is now destroyed, and the monster that was here will go into this town, and then this one will go into the outside just like that. Now you're only drawing 2 monsters per round, but let's say it was another round and we drew another 3 monster. Well, this one is already in the building and it's already been destroyed. What happens is this one actually destroys any of the other buildings that you choose. Let's say you choose this one, and this one would then get discarded. This monster would move in, and then the 3 monster would get added to the zone outside just like that. Now obviously if a monster is added to a zone that has nobody, it just goes to the outside like that. And keep in mind, as monsters are added, you're also putting on the coins of the health of that monster as shown as coins on the monster. Now, in the battle monsters phase, you're not battling one monster like in the base game. You are battling a zone. And if you go to a specific zone, you can say which of the monsters you're battling or multiple of those. If you were doing 10 damage, for example, you could do here and here, and you could almost kill both of them, taking wounds from any of the ones that you've hit and taking the amount of coins from either ones you've hit as well. So any monster you hit, you take coins equal to the damage, and you also take wounds equal to the damage there for the wounds as well. Now when you visit the town, going to the alchemist or the armory is the same as the base game. But if you go to the Carpenter's Guild, you can spend 10 to repair a building, which is removing a wound card from that and discarding it. And or you can spend 6 to discard a monster. When you do that, you discard the monster out. You do not keep this as a trophy, and any coins on it gets put into the supply. If you go to the wizard shop, you can look at the next 4 monster tiles and return them at the top in any order. But remember, you're still only going to 1 building per round. Now, if you're getting into round 7, instead of placing monsters like normal, you're going to place the boss monster. You had one of these cards at the beginning, and you put it in the zone said here. This is zone 1, so it was going here, so it pushed this monster as normal into the town like that. And each of these has a different amount of wound and strength and abilities that are pretty self-explanatory on the cards. Now, you lose this game if at any time all 4 buildings are destroyed, or if the boss monster destroys any one building, the entire town is flattened and you lose. However, if you're able to keep at least 1 building intact and you defeat the boss monster, you win. Now, if you want to compare your previous victories to this one, there is a scoring system you can use, but the points only happen if you've won. Monster trophies are worth 3 points, intact buildings are 5 points each, gear cards are 1 point for every 2 cards, leftover coins are 1 point for each 5 coins, and then there's a difficulty bonus for 6, which is the advanced, or 12 for extreme, so let's look at those. Now the advanced difficulty, anytime you go into round 2, 4, or 6, you'll notice a little plus there. You add a modifier to the first monster that comes out, and those modifier cards are the same ones you used in the non-solo game. And extreme is the same as this advanced, but in the beginning you place 4 monsters instead of 2, and making sure that all 4 starting monsters are in the different zones. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Spell Smashers and get to the fun quicker than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have further questions about the rules, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video, and that's the best place to ask them, because not only will I be notified, but so will Renegade Game Studios.